Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is dedicated by, and we're learning for this entire week, dedicated by our Torah Center namesake donors, Margaret and Daniel S. Loeb, and for the Refuah Shlema Vayigash for today, the continued health of Chana Bat Sima Fega, and the year of Breakfast in the Class is dedicated loving memory of Nishmat Ruth Orfali Bat Adela Alea Shalom, sponsored by her family. We also want to send our condolences to the entire Shetrit family on the passing of Jacob Shetrit Alav Shalom. Nishmato Eded. We should be zochet to celebrate only simachot together, long life, health for the entire family. Be'ezat Hashem. It's been a little bit of a rough go between Joe Judah Mayer's father, and then Nancy's mother, and now Joe's brother. Hashem should bless the people that need koach in the difficult times to be able to have everything they need in order to be strong for this challenging period. My friends, Leilu Nishmat Yaakov ben Shimon ve'Aisha. Let's begin. The pasuk says as follows. Well, let me set first the context of what we're saying. The Torah tells us that after Yosef reveals himself to the brothers, he tells them exactly who he is. They're blown away, flabbergasted. They can't believe what they're looking at. This is their brother, the one that all those years ago they sold into slavery. They can't believe it, how did it happen? And they're also realizing that everything that Yosef dreamed about and that they fought with him over had come true. They had bowed to him. The first dream had come true, and now the second dream was on its way to becoming true. We pointed out in the Shabbat afternoon class a few weeks ago that the two dreams were not only a repetition of each other, that you have the bushels of wheat bowing to the bushel of Yosef, but rather the dreams also expressed how that which would come about would actually play out. So the first time the bowing was associated with wheat. They needed to come down to Egypt to be able to get food. So the first bowing that takes place, the brothers, is in the context of wheat. What's the second? The second already is a whole different ballgame. The second already is in the context of stars. Now that's weird. What does that have to do with stars? The answer is so powerful. We know that Avraham Avinu was blessed by God. God took him out. He showed him the stars of the sky. He said, "Could you count the stars in the sky? Ko yezaracha. So will be your children." Avraham asks a question of God about this prophecy about his children. He says, "How will I know? How will I know?" And God says to him, "Yado ateda." You should just know that your nation, your family is going to be enslaved by a nation for 400 years. They're going to go in a land that doesn't belong to them. Where was that? In Egypt. So the dream of the stars comes about by the Jewish people coming down to Egypt. That's the second dream. So the first dream happens surrounding wheat. The second dream is about bringing about, manifesting the nibu'ah of Avraham Avinu regarding the stars, which is what his children would become. Please only answer amen if you're listening to this live. Baruch atah Adonai, melech haolam, she'akol nהיה baro. Charles, this is one of the things I shouldn't be having. All right. Coffee is terrible for your throat. My friends, okay, let's continue. So the Gemara, the pasuk tells us that Yosef, in sending for his father, what does he do? He says to Yehuda, he says, "Please go back. I want you to bring my father down to Egypt, but please, don't let your eyes feel bad of all your possessions that are in wherever you are. Just come as you are. I'm the king over here, Mishneh LaMelech. Whatever you need, no problem, I got you." By the way, unfortunately, in the Exodus story of countless Jews from countless countries, that was their story. They left, and they left everything behind. So the first, if you will, the iconoclast moment of going into Galut as a family, as a people, happens without their possessions. And that would play out time and time again. You know, it's just recently we put out this video. I put it out on my social media profile. Someone sent it to me. Actually, probably about 10 people sent it to me. Some guy went and videoed a place in Damascus called Beit Farhi. It's a magnificent palace, belonged to the Farhi family, and it's still standing. And it's been renovated, and it's now then was used as a university, I think, and then it was used again as a hotel. So that used to belong to our family.
But they paid for it, right?
No, they didn't. They paid nothing. I don't know. I'm looking. I'm checking in the mail, by the way. I'm sure maybe the checks are coming. I'm not sure. So what's it called? I got nothing for it. So just so you understand, that house stayed there. The money that you had stayed there. You couldn't take it with you. So what did you do? You took whatever you could. You translated some things into a diamond, into something you could put in your pocket. And then you took that with you, and they left everything behind. People will tell me they remember running away from Libya in the hectic moments that they had. You know, a lot of places they let you leave, but they didn't let you leave with any of your goods. So my friends, that started in this moment. Yosef says to Yehuda, don't worry about what you have back there. And he sent him the agalot. And our rabbis tell us that these agalot that Yosef sent to get his father were not just convenient. You know, Uber goat. He wasn't just sending him, you know, a piece of cake moving, you know, so that he could bring his stuff down from Egypt, from Israel to Egypt. Rather, the agalot were a shorthand. They were a message that Yosef was sending to his father. And what was the message that he was sending to his dad? The message was, say Chazal, that the very last thing that we studied together was the story, the halachot of Egla Arufa. Now, by the way, what are the laws of Egla Arufa? The laws of Egla Arufa are a very interesting law. What happens if there's a person who's traveling between place to place? Anyway, as he leaves the city, he's attacked, who knows, by bandits, by wild animals, and he dies. They find a body at the side of the road, out in the outskirts of the town. What's the halakha? They actually measure which town the dead body is closest to. Is it Deal? Is it Long Branch? Which is it closest to? Whichever town the dead body is closer to, the Beit Din of that town has to come out and do the procedure called Egla Arufa, involving an Egla. This is a goat. They bring it out there. They put their hands on the goat like a sketch, like a bit of a korban, and they say, "Our hands were not responsible for this death." And there's a whole prayer that they give as well to Hashem for the community. So a whole intricate thing about which city it's close to. The zikanim go out. They do this prayer. There's the Egla Arufa. It brings forgiveness for the fact that there was negligence, perhaps in looking out for the people that came through their town, for looking out for the vulnerable people. And that's the story of Egla Arufa. So what does Yosef do? He sends his father agalot. What's agalot? Wagons. Agalot, egela, hey, bada bing, bada bang, forget about it. That's what that's Rabbi Hananiah, that's the game Yosef is playing. Right, you know. When my father escaped from Halab, so he was sending his parents a telegram to tell them that he and the person he escaped with were safe. But because of the muhabarat, they couldn't show that the family knew that the kids were escaping. Because then the family that was left behind, that stayed, would get punished. So when they got to safety, he sent a telegram. He sent his mother, the family, congratulations. We had twin boys. We named them Yitzchak and Ezra, and thank God everybody's okay. That was how his mother found out after her son escaped in the middle of the night that he was safe. Because they were talking in code because of the Muhabbarat. Majnun. Right? My father escaped. Him, right, was Yitzchak Farhi and, ironically, Ezra Gindi. Not this Ezra Gindi, but a Ezra Gindi. So Yitzchak, the twins were born, Yitzchak and Ezra. My father needed to communicate with his mother that way because otherwise there'll be ramifications. Yosef, you want to tell your dad you remember what you last learned together. You know what? Send him a message. I remember what I last learned it. You want to hint it? No problem. You know how you hint it? You send an eglah. Send an actual goat. A calf. Why is he sending agalot? Now, let me ask you this. Let's say the last thing they learned was not eglah rufa. Let's say the last thing they learned was hachnasat orchim. What would he have sent? He still would have sent them wagons. Right? You're moving a bunch of people, families. You're moving them down to Egypt. What are you going to send them? Wagons. So in what world was this an idea that Yosef had to send wagons to his father? One opinion is something was written on the side. You know what I always had a problem with this answer? What's my problem? Ikar haser min hasefer. You know what that means? Ikar haser min hasefer means you missed out the main point then. If he wrote him a note on the wagon, then what was the message? The note, not the wagon. So it should say, and he sent a note with his father that he scrolled. Not only that, once you're sending a note, just write it on a piece of paper like a normal person. The whole thing is very strange, isn't it? I think there's many answers. And some of the answers look like one another. They're a little similar. They're variations on a theme. Kind of like the guy over there, looks a little bit like Messi. But the point is, my friends, did anyone else not notice that Lionel Messi just came to breakfast on the class? No, you. Yeah, you never got that before? All right. Someone throw a ball at him. Okay. My friends. Yeah, you caught it. Listen to this, my friends. You know what the answer is? The answer is actually hidden, I believe, in another little bit of information that we have. And that bit of information is a woman known as Serach bat Asher. Who's Serach bat Asher? The hint is in the name. She's Bat Asher, the daughter of Asher. She lived, according to Chazal, an extraordinarily long life. According to some opinions, she never died. She asked to go up to Shamayim alive because Yaakov gave her a blessing. Why did Yaakov give her a blessing? Because when they came back to tell Yaakov, it was such a sensitive situation. He'd lost his son that he never stopped mourning for. Now the second son, Binyamin, they take Binyamin. They're forced to take Binyamin as well. The father is terrified. Now they come back. If they tell him we found Yosef, they would bifledge. What would happen? He's going to die on the spot. Anyway, they get Serach. She pulls out her harp. She starts singing. Probably not that tune. Okay? She's singing a song. And slowly she breaks the news to Yosef. To Yaakov. About Yosef. Maybe from Serach bat Asher we understand what Yosef was doing here. Yosef was communicating with his father on the most subliminal of ways. He knew that getting a letter from his son would also be way too much. Even sending him an eglah would have been too much. So what did he do? He found some form of clever wordplay to hint at something without actually saying it. My friends, I want to hit pause. I mean, what an unbelievable concept. Like, it happens to be that the last thing they learned happens to be Igla Arufa, which are the laws of a man that goes out to the city outskirts and gets killed on the city outskirts. What happens immediately after that? Yosef goes to the city outskirts and his sons come back holding his coat dipped in blood that he thought was the blood of a human being. All these years later, when Yosef hints to him, he messages him, this Eglah, I think this is the Nukudah. He wanted to change the conversation. Because if I was Yaakov, Has v'shalom, you know what I might be thinking? Why did God arrange that the last thing I learned before this happened was to learn about the responsibility that the Bet Din had for not protecting the person? I imagine that every day in the 22 years that Yosef is missing, Yaakov thought only about one thing. Only about the fact that when someone leaves your house, it's your responsibility to make sure that they have safe passage. I sent him by himself. How'd I do that? It's my fault. And look, God was sending me a message that the last thing I learned before he disappeared was what? Was Eglah Arufah, where the Zaken, the elderly, have to go out and say, this was not our fault. I don't know if I could say that. I think that's what Yosef was doing. He wanted his father to know that it was him. But he understood in his mind also how painful getting an Eglah might be. Or writing him, I remember imagine his father got that. The last thing we learned about was how you're not supposed to send someone by themselves. You know, remember that? You know? Can you imagine getting a letter like that 22 years later? The last thing we learned was that you're supposed to do levaya. You're supposed to walk with the guy to make sure that he's safe. Dad, you didn't make sure I was safe. That's how Yaakov would have interpreted it.
Also sent to Shem, he sent it to the brothers who were so angry.
He sent them to the brothers that were angry with him. Just by the way, a beautiful piece. He sent them to Shechem, and what's fascinating is, when he gets there, he meets Gabriel, and he says, where are my brothers? And the angel says to him, Naseu mizeh. They left from this. Fascinating, because how do you say from here in Hebrew? Naseu mipo, naseu mikan. What does naseu mizeh mean? The Chachamim say, Zeh, Zayin, and Hey is 7 and 5. He told him they have traveled from 12. Your brothers are no longer in a state of mind where they see themselves as 12 brothers. Naseu mizeh. They left from Zeh, from this, from 12. Don't go. Yosef has his father's command. He has his brother's best interest. He says, Et achai anochi mevakesh. I'm looking for my brothers. I got to do what I got to do. My friends, so Yosef hints this to him. Yosef sends him a message and he says, Dad, I remember what we last learned, but that's not how I think of it. You understand? I don't think of Eglah Arufah, and I don't think that I should send you an Eglah. I think that this happens to be that Eglah, Agala, sounds like, happens to be that this happened to me. But it's not something that was your fault. Dad, don't feel guilty. What's interesting is that Yosef, after having been hard done by everybody, what is his line to everybody? Don't get angry. Don't fight on the way. Don't blame each other. This is what he's telling his brothers. And I'm sure that he was also telling his father the same thing. Dad, don't worry about it. This wasn't your fault. However, I think in the process of learning this, we also learned something else. How much had Yosef gone through from that crazy time, that idyllic time living by his father's side, going to check on his brothers till now? the fighting, the pit, the slavery, the character defamation case, against him with Potifera, the prison, the thing, Paro, his brothers, how much had transpired. And yet, not only did Yaakov remember what the last thing they learned was, but Yosef also remembered the last thing that he learned with his father. Because there's something special about the lessons you learn from your father, the lessons you learn from your mother. Shema beni, listen, my son. Titosh. Shema beni musar avicha. Listen, my son, to the musar of your father. Musar is what you teach someone when you're trying to get them to go in the right way. Ve'al titosh Torah imecha. And never leave the Torah you learned from your mother. The impact that parents can make on their children when they teach them how to live, how to act, how to speak, how to hold themselves, how to do business, how to treat each other in a marriage, how to treat the children. Those lessons, they'll stay with us forever. Shema b'ni musar avicha, al titosh Torah imecha. 22 years later, Yosef HaTzadik says to his father, I still remember we were last learning. I have a question. You call up customer service now these days. They answer the phone. Guy says, hello, my name is Charles. Rohi, your name ain't Charles. They outsourced all customer service. India, right? That's the Far East. Talking to some guy, he's telling you, good morning, my name is Charles. It's not the morning for you, Charles. And stop calling yourself Charles. I don't get better service because you're fake calling yourself Charles. We outsource customer service, right? Not only have we outsourced customer service, by and large, we've also outsourced Judaism. Where's my kid go? He goes to Yeshiva Day School. Yeshiva Day School he goes to. Where does she go? She goes to Yeshiva. She goes to Bet Yaakov. She goes to here. Where are they going to go after that? They're going to go to Yeshiva High School. My friends, let me remind you what we say every morning and every night. Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam. And you will teach it levanecha to your children. V'dibarta bam, and you will speak those words of Torah. Who's going to teach your kids? We think that if we pay what we believe is extortionate money in tuition, somebody has the responsibility of raising our kids. Someone's going to give them right and wrong. Someone's going to teach them. My favorite line was, you ever see parents very upset at the kid? This is what you learned at school? No, Dad, this is what I learned at home. As if the school becomes responsible to be the parent. What do they call it? In loco parentis. For those of you who like Latin in the morning. I speak Latin and my name is Charles. Good morning. At what point did the school become the adoptive parents of your children? It is true that there'll be a rabbi there, and maybe he'll teach Gemara, and there'll be a teacher, and maybe they'll teach them to sing Shalom Aleichem, and maybe they'll teach them about the parasha. But whose responsibility is the education of your children yours and yours alone. Maybe we should stop seeing the schools and the yeshivot as being responsible for doing that, and instead we should think of them as being our partners in doing that. But end of the day, if you cheated on your taxes and you go to court, you can't throw the accountant under the bus. It's your job to pay the taxes. Do you get this? So look at this beautiful, beautiful message here. 22 years go by. His world is rocked back and forth, but Yosef still remembers the last thing he learned with his dad. Dads, what's the last thing you learned with your kids? When was the last time your children learned something from you? That you sat down and you taught them something of value. Some people are lucky enough to be able to work with their children. Some people are also unlucky enough to be able to work with their children. Depends on you and on them if you're lucky or unlucky. But my friends, ultimately, the greatest investment we make in this lifetime is our children. Not the real estate, not the apartment, not the car. You know, there's a bumper sticker that I saw once. The bumper sticker said, "Be nice to your kids. They choose your nursing home." And you know what I was thinking? Why stop there? We can make the bumper sticker more morbid. Be nice to your kids. After you're gone, your name is in their hands. Are we raising our children to carry our names in the way that we want it carried? You know, I was at a funeral a week and a half ago, and every single speaker mentioned that their grandfather, that their father, everyone, not one didn't say it, about how he always said, make the name proud. Make the name, let everybody know that this is a name of good. Make my name, keep the level of the name that I gave you, or maybe even better. Every single, right? You were there. Every single speech, a lot of speeches, every speech said it. He hammered this in to the point that when his kids or grandkids had to speak about him, they immediately knew what they were going to say. Yosef HaTzadik literally lives in the craziest life, but the minute he needs to say hello to his dad, he already knows exactly how he's going to do it, how he's going to send the agala, exactly what, because he remembers clearly what that message was. My friends, when was the last time you sat with your kid? And there's always that one smug guy who listens to a class and thinks to himself, yesterday, Rabbi, actually. Yesterday I said, when was the time before that? You happened to get lucky that you heard this class the day after. Well done. And by the way, the fact that you learn with him, ask yourself a second follow-up question. Was it a lesson that was so profoundly imparted that you could say without a shadow of a doubt that 22 years from now, he'll remember what you said? I don't remember what I said 22 years later. That's why I record it all. But I think about this often. I happen to be lucky. My children and my grandchildren will have an enormous repository of the Torah that I want them to know, about the life I want them to lead. They'll have thousands of these after I'm gone, to guide them, to remember, to live a life that I hope and I pray every day that they will lead in the future. Where's yours? I don't think you have to start a breakfast in the class. I'm not looking for competition.
What about mothers? You haven't spoken to them.
Mothers and fathers in this are exactly the same, except that there's no mothers here. I mean, it's 2024, so I don't want to make any assumptions. Right? No mothers here? Okay. Shema beni musar avicha, al titosh Torah imecha. The pasuk uses a different word for the education that's given by a father and the education that's given by a mother. Musar avicha, Torah imecha. But either way, in both cases, it's listen. Al titosh. Don't leave it behind. They are our most important investment in this life. And they hopefully will carry our name into the future. The lessons that we have imparted into them. So are you getting all of those across? And have you got them across in a way where even in the craziest circumstances, there's no wobble? Someone once said to me, Rabbi, do you think it's a good idea for me to write like a 10 commandments for my children? I said, first of all, don't call them commandments. Don't call them commandments. Odds are that alone will ensure that they're not kept. Right? Also, maybe you want to go with a different number. Like 10 commandments is someone cornered that market already. So maybe go with like the 8 suggestions or the 7 pieces of advice. Right? 10 commandments is taken. There's even a movie about it. So my friends, he said, is that a good idea? And I said, I don't know if it's 10 or 4 or 8 or 9 or 6. I don't know if there's suggestions or commandments. But we just learned in the Masechet, in the end of Masechet Makot, that all the great scholars, as time passed, took the Torah and condensed it into 13 things, into 10 things, into 6 things, 7 things, whatever, 3 things. Finally, Chavakuk ve'emidan al echat. Chavakuk came and he condensed the Torah into one concept. I'm not Chavakuk. I don't know if you are either. Okay? So I'm not condensing it to one thing. But imagine you had a short amount of time to communicate these things. Are you ready? There used to be a thing that they would tell young entrepreneurs. Okay, go, give me an elevator pitch. What's an elevator pitch? For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, that's not where you wind up and throw a fastball in a small area. Elevator pitch has nothing to do with pitching. It's the idea that you want to tell me about your company, you want me to invest in you. There's the 20-minute pitch, and then there's the 1-minute pitch that you get to be able to finish by the time you get from downstairs to upstairs, because we happen to be sharing an elevator. That's an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is in 60 seconds, in 90 seconds, right? Can I communicate why my company is valuable, why it's worth your investment, why it's going to be successful? My friends, do you have an elevator pitch? If you had a short amount of time to communicate your values to the next generation in a way where they'll never forget it, if you had the short amount of time to be able to communicate everything important, would you be able to, do you have an elevator pitch ready? My friends, I have a secret. You do have a short amount of time. All of us do have a short amount of time to pitch, to elevator pitch our children on these important things. So think, condense, keep a notebook. And hopefully, 22 years after you say something, your kid could say, Dad, you taught me something, I'll never forget it. Al titosh Torah imecha. Baruch Hanei le'olam.